March 21st, 2026, 3:47 a.m. local time. 16 ballistic missiles breached Israeli airspace. Not over open desert, not toward Tel Aviv or Haifa, where Iron Dome batteries have defended successfully hundreds of times. These missiles were aimed at two locations. Most Israelis don't talk about publicly, and Israeli defense planners have spent billions protecting. Dimona and Arad. The first houses Israel's undeclared nuclear weapons program. The second sits 25 kilometers southwest, home to critical nuclear research infrastructure and what intelligence assessments have long described as backup enrichment facilities. At 3:51 a.m., THAAD interceptors launched from positions south of Beersheba. American-made, American-operated, the most advanced missile defense system ever deployed to Israeli territory, designed specifically to stop exactly this kind of threat. 7 interceptors fired, 7 targets engaged. And according to an IDF statement released 6 hours later, using language carefully chosen for what it didn't say, interceptions were attempted but were unsuccessful. By 4:00 a.m., aerial imagery from commercial satellites showed impact craters, structural damage, and thermal signatures consistent with explosions at both sites. By 6:00 a.m., Israeli emergency services reported approximately 180 wounded, the majority from Dimona and surrounding areas. By 8:00 a.m., Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a statement calling the strike direct and precise retaliation for the criminal American Zionist attack on Natanz, and warning that all Israeli nuclear facilities are within range and within our capability. By noon, the Israeli government had imposed a near-total information blackout on both sites, barred journalists from areas within 40 kilometers, and begun damage assessments under emergency protocols usually reserved for existential national security threats. And by the time international inspectors requested access to verify no radiological contamination had occurred, Israel had already said no. What happened in those 13 minutes between launch and impact is the story Israel doesn't want told, but the implications, the vulnerabilities exposed, and the strategic questions now facing every defense planner in Washington, Tel Aviv, and allied capitals can't be buried by classification orders or controlled media narratives. If you're here because you're tired of sanitized coverage that accepts official statements without asking the hard questions, you're in the right place. This is war conflict. We analyze what others won't touch. Hit subscribe now, because what I'm about to break down didn't make it into a single mainstream outlet, and the reason why matters as much as the event itself. The strike didn't come out of nowhere. It came 11 days after March 10th, when Israeli F-35s, operating with American aerial refueling support and intelligence coordination, conducted what both governments called a limited precision strike on Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment facility. That operation destroyed, according to satellite imagery analysis and Iranian acknowledgments, approximately 60% of Iran's IR-6 advanced centrifuge arrays. It set back Iran's nuclear program by an estimated 18 to 24 months, and it killed, according to Iranian reports, 23 scientists and technicians working inside, hardened underground sections of the facility. Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a necessary operation to prevent Iran from reaching nuclear breakout capacity. President Biden, in carefully worded remarks, said the U.S. supports Israel's right to defend itself from nuclear threats. Iran called it an act of war. Supreme Leader Khamenei, in a speech 2 days after Natanz, promised a response that will remind the Zionist entity that its nuclear program is no more immune than ours. Intelligence assessments from the CIA and Mossad, according to leaks published in the New York Times on March 18th, predicted Iran would retaliate within 2 to 3 weeks using conventional strikes on military targets, possibly including air bases or naval facilities. The assessment specifically noted that THAAD deployment to southern Israel, completed in January 2026, provided high confidence in defending against Iranian ballistic missile threats to strategic sites. High confidence. That assessment aged poorly. THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, represents the most capable exo-atmospheric interceptor system in the American arsenal. It's designed to engage ballistic missiles in their terminal phase, outside the atmosphere, at altitudes between 40 and 150 kilometers. Each interceptor costs approximately $12 million. The radar system can track targets 1,000 kilometers away. And its demonstrated test intercept rate, according to U.S. Missile Defense Agency data, exceeds 85%. When the U.S. deployed a THAAD battery to Israel in January, explicitly positioning it to defend Dimona and other southern strategic sites, the message was clear. Iran's ballistic missiles no longer posed an existential threat to Israel's most sensitive locations. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, during a February press conference, stated that THAAD provided an unprecedented defensive umbrella over our strategic assets that no adversary can penetrate. On March 21st at 3:51 a.m., that umbrella failed. 16 missiles launched from positions inside Iran between 3:32 and 3:38 a.m. Flight time to Israeli targets, approximately 12 to 15 minutes depending on trajectory. The missiles were identified as Kheibar Shekan medium-range ballistic missiles, Iranian-produced systems with a range exceeding 1,400 kilometers, maneuverable re-entry vehicles designed specifically to complicate intercept solutions, and a demonstrated capability to carry payloads up to 1,500 kilograms. They did not follow standard ballistic trajectories. Instead, according to radar tracking data later leaked to defense correspondents, the missiles executed mid-course maneuvers, altering their projected impact points multiple times during flight. This technique, known as evasive maneuvering, is designed to defeat ballistic missile defenses that rely on predictive intercept calculations. THAAD calculates where a missile will be based on its observed trajectory and launches interceptors to meet it at a predicted intercept point. If the missile changes course mid-flight, the interceptor arrives where the missile was supposed to be, not where it actually is. At 3:47 a.m., as the missiles began their terminal descent toward Dimona and Arad, THAAD radar systems detected them and generated firing solutions. 7 interceptors launched within 90 seconds. Each interceptor accelerated to speeds exceeding Mach 8, climbing into the upper atmosphere to engage targets before they could reach impact. And each one missed. Not because the interceptors malfunctioned, not because the radar failed, but because the targets weren't where THAAD's system predicted they would be. The missiles had maneuvered one final time during terminal phase, a capability Israeli and American intelligence assessments had not credited Iranian missiles with possessing. At 3:51 a.m., the first missile impacted approximately 800 meters northeast of Dimona's primary reactor complex. The explosion, estimated at 1,200 to 1,500 kilograms of high explosive, created a crater roughly 12 meters wide and damaged above-ground support structures. Over the next 4 minutes, 6 more missiles struck within a 3-kilometer radius of Dimona. 2 more hit sites near Arad. The remaining 7 missiles were engaged successfully by David's Sling and arrow systems, operating in backup layers, but those systems are designed for mid-course intercept, not terminal phase. They stopped missiles that THAAD should have already handled. The 7 that got through were the ones THAAD was supposed to stop. Israel's official statement, released at 9:00 a.m., confirmed impacts at strategic sites in southern Israel and acknowledged approximately 180 wounded, primarily from blast effects and structural damage. What the statement didn't say is more important than what it did. It didn't say whether the reactor itself was damaged. It didn't say whether any radiological material was affected. It didn't say what specific facilities were hit. And it didn't say whether the nuclear weapons storage sites, believed to be located in underground bunkers at Dimona, remained secure. Satellite imagery from commercial providers, published by defense analysts within 18 hours, showed impact craters near the main reactor building, close enough to suggest significant structural stress from blast overpressure, damage to above-ground cooling infrastructure and administrative buildings, thermal signatures consistent with fires that burned for more than 6 hours, and heavy equipment, likely indicating emergency repairs, positioned around multiple damaged structures. Independent nuclear weapons experts analyzing the imagery noted that while the reactor itself appeared intact, several impacts occurred within 500 meters of suspected underground weapons storage facilities. Blast effects from 2,500-kilogram warheads at that proximity could potentially compromise structural integrity of underground bunkers if they were not designed to current hardening standards. Israel has never publicly acknowledged possessing nuclear weapons. It has never confirmed the specific purpose of Dimona beyond nuclear research. And it has never disclosed the exact locations of weapons storage, assembly facilities, or delivery system integration sites, which means the public has no way to know what was actually damaged, how close the strikes came to catastrophic outcomes, and whether Israel's nuclear deterrent, the ultimate guarantee of national survival, remains fully operational. Israel's silence is the answer. If the damage were minimal, if the nuclear program were completely unaffected, Israel would say so. The deterrent value of nuclear weapons depends on adversaries believing they're credible and secure. The fact that Israel won't provide details, won't allow inspections, and has locked down information with classification orders that extend to satellite imagery analysis by Israeli institutions suggests the damage was significant enough to raise questions Israel doesn't want to answer. THAAD failed. Not partially. Not in a degraded mode. It fired 7 interceptors and all 7 missed. That's not a technical glitch. That's a fundamental problem with the intercept model when facing maneuverable re-entry vehicles, and Iran just proved, publicly and undeniably, that they have that capability. Every Israeli defense planner now has to recalculate what defended means. THAAD was supposed to provide near-certain protection for Dimona. It didn't, which means the next time Iran decides to strike, the assumption that strategic sites are protected no longer holds. Dimona is 30 kilometers from Beersheba, 60 kilometers from Gaza, and sits in open desert terrain with limited natural protection. It's been Israel's worst-case defensive scenario since the facility was built in the 1960s. For decades, the solution was Iran can't reach it, then Iran's missiles aren't accurate enough, then our defenses will stop them. March 21st demolished that progression. Iran can reach it, their missiles are accurate enough. And THAAD, the system designed specifically to stop them, failed at the moment it mattered most. The question now is what happens next time, because there will be a next time. Iran demonstrated they can strike Israel's nuclear program. They demonstrated that American defensive systems can be defeated, and they demonstrated that Israel's nuclear deterrent, the undeclared but universally acknowledged foundation of Israeli strategic security, is not immune. That changes calculations in Tehran, in Washington, and in every Middle Eastern capital trying to assess what the balance of power actually looks like now. 180 wounded, 7 THAAD interceptors expended. 0 successful intercepts. Impact craters within 500 meters of Israel's nuclear weapons program. March 21, 2026 will not be remembered as the day Iran attacked Israel. It will be remembered as the day Israel's ultimate defensive layer failed, and the nuclear program that has guaranteed survival for 60 years became demonstrably vulnerable. Israel won't admit the full extent of the damage. It won't allow inspections. It won't discuss what was hit or how close the strikes came to catastrophic outcomes. But the silence is the story. Every missile defense system has limits. THAAD's limit is maneuverable re-entry vehicles. Iran just exploited that limit perfectly. What happens when they do it again? Can THAAD be upgraded to handle this threat? Or is the vulnerability fundamental? And what does Israel do when the system designed to protect its most critical asset can't? Share your perspective below. Is this a technical problem that can be fixed? Or did Iran just checkmate Israel's nuclear deterrent? Your engagement pushes analysis like this past the sanitized official narratives. This is war conflict, the details they won't report, the questions they won't ask.